All right, so I hope that makes sense. You can take any object for something that is that has more than one or two ingredients in it, and you can use those objects and assign some meaning to those objects, right? Now, this is a really, really quick summary, so if this is confusing, there's much more detailed information that I can give you on that one. But it's important to understand that visualization will completely prevent understanding. And in a word problem in math, that's often the case. That's often the case. I'll give you another example of that, and that would be most parents or most adults have a bad memory of having to learn about the three branches of government. Because what's being done there when people teach about the three branches of government, they often, the first thing they do is they give you misunderstood words. You're being taught about executive branch and legislative branch and judicial branch, and already we got three misunderstood words or unknown words, right? And it gets worse from there. But if I just said this, let me see if this helps. I'm going to take physical objects in order to make more sense out of this, and I want to see whether or not this is easier for you to understand. This is President Washington, okay? This right here is a judge. Judge, like in a black robe. If you're talking to a child, maybe they know some of the judges from TV, like Judge Judy or something like that. And this right here is actually a bunch of people. Let's add something. These guys are senators. The people that we see on TV sometimes, the people that vote on bills, senators, right? Now if I say, these are the three branches of government, it's not quite as difficult to understand anymore. A president, judges, senators. Those are the three branches of government. Can you see how your thoughts attach to these objects? Right? Let's put the president off to the side. This is President Washington. Off to the side for a moment. Right? So here we have the judge, and that's where the word judicial comes from. Right? That's the judicial branch. Right? This is Congress right here. Right? These are the senators. Senators is what makes up Congress. Right? They make legislation. There's a lot of misunderstood words here, or unknown words here for some people, right? So legislation means new law, right? These are the people who make the law. Senators. It's called the legislative branch because they make legislation. So legislative branch, senators. Judicial branch, judges. Executive branch, George Washington. You can put any president's name in here, right? But the president, right? Now, for those of you who had difficulty understanding that before, it might be a whole lot easier now, right? What did we do? We gave you visualization. I did not use real objects. I used substitutes, surrogates, basically. And with that, I was able to clear up for some of you guys words that didn't make sense to you before, right? And you notice that once those words are clear, the confusion goes away, right? So lack of visualization is the third problem with learning something. The fourth one is poor memorization skills. A lot of children suffer from that. You can have a child that's doing well in math. They did well with learning how to obviously count at first. They did well with adding. They can see it, right? Adding makes a whole bunch of sense to a child because you can say, look, there's 2 apples here, and then there's 2 more apples. Count them, and obviously there's now 4 apples. So you can prove it to yourself. And so because of that, there's no confusion on the subject, right? However, that is no longer the case when you have to memorize. Memorization is very, very different because the learning process is different. So if you have somebody who's doing great in math and now they get to the timetables, they might understand multiplication just fine, but can they memorize the timetables? That's more difficult. So for the memorization process, what you need to do, and I wrote it down here, let me make sure the camera catches that. So I wrote here, memorization needs to be completed within the first 24 hours. I'm going to explain in a moment why. And there's 2 aspects to memorization, the 10-second rule as well as cycling. 3 to 5 items only. So what does that mean? Let me bring this camera back up so I'm in the shot again, right? Well, what it means is this. Let's say we're having timetables you got to work, right? You're trying to teach somebody, you're trying to teach a child how the multiples of 3. 1 times 3 is 3, 2 times 3 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9, all the way up to 10, right? Now, you could do that You can use a list. A lot of times at a school supply store, you can buy those printed lists. And for initially learning the timetables and memorizing them, I would not recommend using a list. It's great to use a list eventually as a quick reference, but if your process is to memorize, a list is not the right tool. A better tool is flashcards. Maybe some of you use flashcards for your children. Don't stop using them for your children. Flashcards are absolutely essential. And here's why. What happens is that you know some of them and you don't know some others. Most people will know that 1 times 3 is 3, and most people will probably know that 2 times 3 is 6, right? That's the easy ones. And then you start getting into the point where you really do have to memorize it, right? Maybe that starts at 4 times 3, and you have a child that goes, I always forget what 4 times 3 is. And so now you can look, it's 12. And you get to the 5 times 3, and your child goes, you know what? I know 5 times 3, that's 15. Okay, so put that in one pile of the ones that you know. 6 times 3, not a clue. What is that? And now you got to look at, all right, it's 18. All right, so I have 2 that I didn't know. I had 3 that I did know. All right, and now you go on to the 3 times 7 or 7 times 3, right? And that's 21. So I would stop a child right here. I found 3 that they don't know. I wouldn't go on any further. I would not go on any further. All right? There's going to be a goal setting aspect to this. Every day that your child works with these 10 cards, the pile of the ones that you know is going to get larger and larger and larger, and the pile of the ones that you don't know is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. That is very motivating. You see your own progress. One of the very important aspects of goal setting is measuring progress. Because when you measure progress and you see yourself improving, that makes you want to continue. When you don't know if you're making any progress, that might make you want to give up. So this affects a student's motivation immediately. Now, how would you do this? Well, don't try to memorize more than 5 items. I would go with 3, ideally. And what we're going to do is, let me bring the camera back down there. Just like it says right here, you're going to do the 10-second rule and you're going to cycle. Let me explain cycling first. That means you're going to do 1 and make sure that the person knows it. Oops, right here. Then take the next one. Make sure the person knows it. And then take the next one. Make sure they know it. And then they're going to forget it again after a couple of seconds. Make the person aware of the 10-second rule. If it's a child, let the child know. Yeah, you know it right now, but in about 10 seconds, you're going to start forgetting it again. So we're going to keep on switching between 3. And the reason why we keep on switching between the 3 is because memorization is a problem of accessing, finding the memory. A little bit like a laptop, like a computer is. So what I'm getting at is this. Let me put my nice little drawing right here of somebody's brain. Imagine that this right here, the front of the brain, now this is not physically how it actually is in the real life, but there's a part of our mind that is aware of what's going on right now, right? But there's also memory. This back part, let's say that this is where all the memory is stored. And this is a lot like this is a hard drive on a computer back here. Well, this section right here is like the RAM, the memory that is available right now. You don't have to search for anything here. This is the stuff that we just talked about. Let's say 3 times 6 is 18, and you know it right away because we just talked about it. But when we start making you focus on something else, like the next number or the one after that, you start forgetting this one. And it actually moves over to your memory, like a hard drive. It's stored somewhere in your memory. Well, the thing is, if you just access it once and you try to go, all right, what was 3 times 6 again? Oh, yeah, I find it right back here somewhere. Let me get a better pen. And you had to access it, just like when you had to find an old computer file that you hadn't found in a long time. And you finally find it. It takes you a little while. You go, oh, okay, I got it now. But the thing is, you only accessed it once. And again, just like a computer file, if you have that, that file that you didn't know what the name was, or you didn't know what folder it was in, and you finally find it, it might take you 10 minutes. And you put it away again, and 2 days later, you got to find it again. And again, it takes you a long time, but not quite 10 minutes. You can find it faster. And if you were searching for that file again every day, after a couple of days, you would find it immediately because you're used to accessing it. So what you want to do is you want to make the person access the memory and then forget it. Purposely let them focus on something else. We cycle, and by cycling it, what we're going to get is we're going to get the conscious thinking of the student to change to something else. So in a way, we're purposely wanting them to store this back here again. And now you ask them a couple of seconds later to access it again. So after you ask them a couple of different questions, you go back to the original question and have the student access it again. Then go to something else. In other words, keep on cycling at least 3 different items or more. So that way the student tucks the memory away, then retrieves it. Then tucks it away, then retrieves it, then tucks it away. And it's this highway, this connection between your memory bank and your conscious mind that you are strengthening. It's easier and faster to access that memory. All right, so it's not just remembering that we're talking about, it is to rapidly access that memory that we're talking about. And that is done through cycling. So I would take 3 of these. If this was my child, I would simply take the first 3 that he had difficulty with. I would carry them with me all day long. And about once an hour or so, I'll ask the child, so what was 7 times 3 again? And you do it like a game. You make it fun. If you're doing this on your own, you take these cards with you. And once an hour, you go, all right, 6 times 3. Oh, that was 18. I got that one now. All right. 4 times 3. Oh, that's a hard one for me. Oh, yeah, 12. All right. And 7 times 3. What was that again? 21. Okay. And now you do that again, maybe half an hour later, maybe an hour later. It doesn't matter. But it does have to occur within the first 24 hours. That's important. Memorization itself, the process needs to be completed in the first 24 hours. It takes us about 24 hours to completely forget everything we learned, or at least 90% of them. If you go with statistically look at how much people retain from what they originally learned, you're going to find that after about 24 hours, most people have forgotten about 90% of what they tried to retain. Right? That's why if you would take a seminar somewhere where there's a lot of information pumping at you, like right now, for example, right? You make notes. And the reason why you make notes is, first of all, by just the process of writing already makes you remember it better. But you have to immediately review. The key is in the frequency of review within the first 24 hours. In other words, yes, you know it right now. We just talked about it. But in about 1 hour, you're going to know much less. If we wait 24 hours, you will have forgotten 90% of what you're supposed to be remembering. Right? So to try to memorize something and then wait 2 days before you go back to it again, try to memorize it some more, that's not efficient at all. That's a frustrating experience. All you're going to do is realize that you've forgotten almost all of it. So if you want to help somebody with memorization, it needs to be done within the same day or within a 24-hour period repeatedly. But it doesn't have to be much. Now, when you first present this to a child, they might think, oh my gosh, that's torture. I have to do this all day long. No. Instead of doing it for sitting down for a long time, all you need is once an hour, 15 seconds. Every hour for 15 seconds, you go, all right, Jimmy, so what is 7 times 3 now? Oh, it's 21. Good, you got it now. And what was 4 times 3? Oh, I keep on forgetting that one. What was it again? Oh, yeah, 12. Oh, still need work on that one. And what was 6 times 3? You know what? I think I got that one now. It's 18. So now we're getting better with this. Oh, look, Jimmy, you got these 2 right. You only have this one that's the problem, the 4 times 3. Right? Can you see how gradually the pile of the ones that you know gets bigger and bigger, and the pile of the ones that you don't know gets smaller and smaller? And that is very, very important for motivation. And it's also important to see how the memorization process works that way. Okay? So I worked with a lot of children over the last 30 years. I've solved a lot of children's education issues over the last 30 years. That's what I do. And it's always one of these 4 areas. Always. Now, one can argue, well, my child has a processing issue or my child has a learning disability. That may well be. But you still need to address one of these 4 areas to go from non-comprehension to comprehension. All right? There are no other areas. If you understand what the words mean, and if you're not going to something that's too complicated for you, that you're not ready for yet, and if you can picture it in your head, and if you can remember it, you got it. These are the 4 areas that prevent people from learning. It's always one of those 4 areas right here. The memorization thing is more easily, spotted. You can tell, well, do you remember what 4 times 3 is? Right? That's easy to notice. Unknown words are more difficult to notice. What you see, by the way, when you see somebody reading something, and they're reading a page or something, it doesn't matter what it is. Here, I'm reading a calendar right here, right? And you see their facial expression changing, or they're normal one moment, and then you see that their eyes are having a hard time focusing. If you yourself are the one reading, you're going to notice that your eyes don't stay on one word. It's almost like the words are moving on the page. It is normal to start yawning. That's a physical sensation. When this happens, all of a sudden, and the person's eyes change, they probably went past an unknown word. It's almost guaranteed. If a moment ago they were looking normal, and by reading, they change into yawning and having the eyes change and not focus on one spot anymore, it's almost guaranteed that it's a misunderstood word, because you're losing the connection with what you're saying or what you're reading here. Okay? The premature advances means that the person is going to be confused, and they're going to be slow, and they're going to be second guessing themselves, and they won't have any confidence at all, right? Lack of visualization is an even greater amount of confusion. They can't even picture it at all. So yes, it is an art form to figure out which one of these 4 areas a student has difficulty with. But you can check for each one of them. Right? You can check for premature advance by going to a previous chapter, or then the chapter before that, or the chapter or the lesson before that, and the lesson before that, and see if there's, okay, he's got lesson 1 he understands, lesson 2 he understands, lesson 3 he understands, but by lesson 4 he doesn't seem so good anymore, and by 5 he's completely lost. All right, so it's somewhere between 3 and 4. You have to go back to that, right? Lack of visualization usually gives you complete confusion. Right? So here, all you have to really do to check for that is to make the person visualize the right thing, right? If, for instance, if it's fractions, can they even picture a pizza cut into like 8 slices, right? If they can picture that, then you can talk to them about fractions, right? If they couldn't picture that, that would be a real problem, right? And poor memorization, like I said before, well, that you can check most easily by seeing how much material they retain. So I hope this helps. I hope you realize that it's going to be one of these 4 areas, and only one of these 4 areas, that prevents somebody from learning something, assuming that they want to learn it, right? If they're really trying and I just don't get it, it's going to be one of these 4 areas. There's never anything else. Right? At least the path to remedying it is going to be in these 4 areas. All right, I hope that helped. Now at our school, where I am available to students that have some severe academic issues, or parents that don't know how to do all this. If everything I just said sounds completely overwhelming to you, all right, and you go like, oh my gosh, there's no way I can do that, let me know. I can help you with that. I do that all the time. I'm going to make you be able to be your child's instructor, and I'm going to be able to make you spot these issues within yourself, because once you notice the severity of these issues, you're going to be able to spot that in the student with much more ease, right? You have to first realize that these things are true and check for them within yourself. So the next time when you're reading a whole page or something, stop the moment it starts getting confusing and look back to see what words might there be that you're not totally sure about. What sentence makes no sense? That's where the misunderstood word is in, right? So I hope this helped. I'm going to be producing a little bit more material to explain each part in a little bit more detail in the future, but for right now, especially with everybody being blocked from being able to go to school, right, a lot of parents have to help their children at home. I wanted to present this to make sure that you realize there is a solution. Even when you don't understand a certain subject that you're supposed to be teaching your child, we can get you through it and we can get your child through it. Okay? And it's a very positive thing once this occurs, because it makes you feel much more enabled if you're realizing, all it was those 2 words that I didn't know. No wonder I didn't understand it. Or if you go like, oh, that's what we're talking about. I wasn't picturing that at all. I was thinking something totally different in my head. Once you go through that a couple of times, you're going to start realizing that there are just 4 techniques. Each one of them is a technique, right? That will get you unstuck. That will make you go, oh, okay, now I get it. Okay? So these are the barriers to learning something, and these are the solutions for them. I hope this helps, and I'll talk to you more later. Thank you. Bye-bye.